Mom, give me some money.
I have no more money to give you. Get a job and work seriously for once.
You're my parent. For heaven's sake, it's only natural to give money to your son.
I've given you enough every month already.
Shh, stingy old lady. I was born in the wrong family. I'm leaving this place.
With those words, Daniel left at the age of 20 and never returned. Honestly, I was relieved. I had reached my limit with Daniel's verbal abuse. I'm Natalie Taylor, now 66 years old. At the age of 20, I married Matthew Brown, who was 5 years my senior, through a family introduction. Matthew was a skilled carpenter. Back then, there were many new houses being built, and his work was going well. The following year, Daniel was born, and we had a fairly happy married life. Everything changed when Daniel turned 6. Matthew was repairing the roof on a rainy day when he slipped and fell off, injuring himself. Although he was discharged from the hospital after a 3-month stay due to a compound fracture of his femur, Matthew was unable to endure the arduous rehabilitation and gave up midway through, suffering from after effects and unable to work as well as before. He had always liked to drink, but due to drastic reduction in work, he started drinking until he was completely drunk every day, and his life quickly became chaotic. He developed alcohol dependence, gambling, clubbing, and wasteful spending. He was indulgent with Daniel, never scolding him no matter what he did. If I tried to discipline him, I'd just get yelled at. Daniel grew closer to Matthew, who never scolded him and became increasingly defiant towards me.
Mom, give me some pocket money.
Daniel, is that how you talk to a parent? Matthew, scold him a bit.
Shut up, old lady. Don't complain about Daniel. You just need to keep earning money.
What are you saying? It's a parent's duty to discipline a child if they're misbehaving. And you could at least try to work a little.
Huh? I have a bad leg. I can't help it. It's a wife's duty to support her husband. That's why I'm taking care of Daniel.
Taking care of him? You're just spoiling him.
This is my way of teaching him. Don't interfere.
I worked tirelessly from dawn till dusk to support the family, which only increased the distance between Daniel and me. Daniel followed Matthew's example in everything, causing trouble at school frequently. Whenever the school raised an issue, Matthew would storm in and shout at the staff.
Hey, who's picking on Daniel? Come out here.
He'd rage in the teacher's meeting room, quickly earning a reputation as a problematic parent. The school gradually stopped addressing Daniel's misbehaviors. Daniel thought Matthew's behavior was cool and became even more arrogant. However, when Daniel was 16, Matthew suddenly passed away from cancer. By the time it was discovered, it was already terminal, and there was no treatment. Matthew had been drinking heavily every day for about 10 years since the accident, so perhaps this outcome was inevitable. At that time, I felt more relief at being freed from Matthew's tyranny than sadness. Now I don't have to listen to Matthew's verbal abuse anymore. But that thought was fleeting. Daniel became exactly like Matthew, as if possessed by him. He stopped going to school, hung around the gaming center all day, and was frequently picked up by the police.
Give me some pocket money, Mom.
I don't have any.
There's Dad's insurance money. Give me that.
Daniel seemed to think insurance money was guaranteed when someone died. But we never had the luxury to afford insurance. Our family didn't have a single cent of that extra money. Any extra money, if we ever had it, mostly went to Matthew's drinking. There was no insurance payout to receive. Even when I explained this, Daniel believed I was hiding money, and his verbal abuse worsened.
It's your lousy earnings that sent Dad to heaven.
Daniel would say this almost daily, trying to steal my part-time job earnings on payday. I barely managed to pay rent and utility bills, maintaining only the bare minimum for living. Me these days? I even seriously considered committing suicide with Daniel. That's how desperate I felt. Then, on his 20th birthday, Daniel left.
I'm an adult now. Goodbye to this poor house. I hope you die alone soon. I'll never come back here.
Even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel might return someday to take money or cause trouble, and I couldn't live in peace. I didn't even think about looking for him. Instead, I moved away and changed jobs, like I was running away. Some might say I'm a cold mother for abandoning her child. But Daniel was already 20 and left on his own accord. What more responsibility could I have? Those 14 years were hell for me. He might be my flesh and blood, but I hoped to never involve myself with him again. 20 years together was enough, wasn't it? If Daniel hadn't left, I probably would have. Once Daniel was out of my life, I finally found peace. I realized just how precious a normal life is. Then 10 years later, through someone at my part-time job, I met my current husband, Jaden Taylor. Having suffered greatly in my first marriage, I wasn't keen on marrying again. Jaden, 4 years older than me and a civil servant, seemed earnest, a word that suited him. Though his appearance was stern, almost like someone from a dangerous world. But despite his looks, he was awkwardly kind, and I felt comfortable with him. After meeting several times, marrying him might lead to a peaceful life, I thought. Jaden had been married once before, losing his first wife, Helena, to illness in their 10th year of marriage. He proposed to me after we visited Helena's grave together.
Why don't we spend the rest of our lives taking it easy together?
I found myself nodding before I realized it. Imagining us leisurely drinking coffee in the warm sunlight, I thought how wonderful it would be to have such a life. Life with Jaden was just as I had imagined, peaceful and slow, without much happening. 15 years went by like that. Jaden, now 70, had retired 10 years ago. He did occasional security work but quit when he turned 70. As long as we didn't live lavishly, we could afford the occasional trip. I thought we would continue to live quietly together. Then one day, breaking the silence, the phone rang unexpectedly. It sounded unusually loud, almost like a bad omen, and I hesitated to pick it up.
Hey, long time no see.
Who is this? The voice sounded like Matthew's, a voice I thought I had forgotten long ago. But Matthew was already dead. Then this voice must be? Just as I realized it, I hung up the phone. The memory of those nightmarish days flooded back, but the phone rang again, and I picked up the receiver with trembling hands.
Hey, why'd you hang up? I finally called you after so long.
The voice was uncannily similar to Matthew's. Daniel's face from 25 years ago came to mind, and I was speechless.
Hey, you haven't forgotten your son's voice, have you?
Daniel?
Yeah, you remember. Of course you would. I'm your dear son. Unforgettable, even after all these years.
How do you know our phone number?
Just a coincidence.
Daniel said he happened to see me at the hospital recently. He wasn't sure if it was me at first, but he sneaked a peek at my registration form from behind. The family name was different, but he was sure it was me. So he quickly noted down the address and phone number. I hadn't noticed him at all, maybe because I was feeling a bit under the weather.
Who would have thought you were living so close? Is this what they call a parent-child bond?
So, what do you want?
Just lend me some money.
What?
You've never done anything parental, so it's only fair, right?
What are you talking about? You're 45 years old, and you were already an adult when you left. I no longer have a responsibility to take care of you.
You're a mother, aren't you? It's a parent's duty to support their child. If you keep talking back, I'll come over to the house.
I consider that I no longer have a son. You're a stranger to me now.
Huh? Don't talk nonsense. Besides, it seems you're remarried without telling me. You know that's trouble for your husband, right?
That's practically blackmail. It seems Daniel has become exactly the person I feared he would. But as we talked, I gradually calmed down. Then Jaden, who had been listening, took the receiver from me. He must have realized it was Daniel. I had told him about Matthew and Daniel before we got married.
Hello? Who are you? Natalie seems troubled. It's none of your business. Oh, wait. If you married my mom, then you're my stepdad. Give me some money.
I could hear Daniel's yelling through the receiver in Jaden's hand. But Jaden responded calmly without changing his expression. To Jaden, Daniel was just an insignificant person.
Are you a gangster or running some it's me scam? I can't deal with this. I'm hanging up.
Daniel was still yelling something, but Jaden hung up the phone. I had thought this day might come, but had somehow forgotten about it. I hadn't seen Daniel for 25 years, and hearing his voice brought no nostalgia, nor any desire to see him. Daniel had become more distant than a stranger. Sure enough, or as expected, Daniel showed up at our house the next day.
Hey, you think you can ignore me and get away with it?
Seeing Daniel, who looked so much like Matthew, shocked me. Not just his appearance, but his expression, the way he shouted, his behavior, all just like the self-destructive Matthew. If I had seen his face at the hospital, I would have definitely recognized him. I knew from the unusual ringing of the doorbell that this was no ordinary visitor, so Jaden went to the door. Daniel hesitated a bit at Jaden's stern look, but probably underestimated him, thinking he's just an old man, and soon smirked.
If you don't want to get hurt, give me the money. What are you? Nowadays, even gang members don't say things like that right away. Want to go to jail? Shut up.
Daniel tried to punch him, but Jaden easily twisted his arm behind his back and took him outside.
It hurts. What are you doing? Let go. Go home now. If you come back here again, it won't end like this. Or do you want me to call the police?
Jaden holds black belts in karate and judo and knows self-defense. He still goes to a dojo and volunteers to teach children. Even at 70, he could easily handle a thug like Daniel. Surprised by the unexpected retaliation, Daniel left, still ranting.
He's just a common extortionist.
I'm sorry for the trouble.
Don't worry, that was good exercise. Ha 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 ha.
Jaden said, laughing. Since then, Daniel hasn't come back, so I felt relieved. But the next person who showed up was even more unexpected. It was about 3 months after Daniel's visit. When I answered the doorbell, a thin, unconfident-looking young man stood there. He stood like a high school student.
Can you lend me just $50?
Pardon? I wondered if this was some kind of doorstep fraud, and so on. But in this day and age, who comes to a stranger's house and asks for money like this? It seemed strange. His clothes were old, deteriorated, and didn't fit well. But somehow he didn't seem like a bad kid. What's wrong? Did you lose your wallet? Are you a high school student?
No, I'm 20. I'm not a high school student. Actually, I didn't go to high school.
You lost your money? Jaden also came out from the back of the house as we were talking.
What's the matter?
At Jaden's question, I shook my head. He's asking for $50.
$50? My name's Henry. Henry Brown.
Brown? Brown is Daniel's family name. A thought crossed my mind. Are you Daniel's?
Yes, Daniel Brown is my father.
Saying this, the young man in front of us began to cry. My mind was in turmoil. It seems that this young man might be my grandson. Daniel is now 45, so it wouldn't be strange for him to have a child this age. But I had never imagined Daniel married with a child. Jaden, seeing the crying young man at the door, invited him inside.
Come in, let's talk.
Henry stepped into the house looking bewildered. I wondered what his life had been like. His clothes suggested he wasn't living a healthy life. He cried for a while and was frightened by every little noise. But when I prepared a simple meal, he ate it eagerly. He stuffed his cheeks like a squirrel storing food. Jaden and I exchanged glances, noticing his behavior. Noticing us, Henry stopped eating, looking embarrassed.
Sorry, I haven't eaten in 3 days.
3 days?
You don't work? I live and work at a friend of my father's.
From there, Henry started to share his story. The more I heard, the more shocked I was by the details. In this day and age, which seemed impossible in today's world, but Jaden just listened silently. Henry said he got a job at a grocery store after finishing middle school. His parents had never intended to send him to high school, expecting him to work and contribute to the household as soon as he graduated middle school.
Children should serve their parents.
That's what he had been told from an early age. As a child, he thought that's how it was supposed to be. But as he grew, he realized his parents were very different from others. Yet, having been indoctrinated that parents are absolute, Henry had no way to rebel. All the money he earned was taken by his parents. Daniel never held a full-time job and spent his days clubbing, gambling, and getting into debt. His mother, Mary, worked in a bar. Though she earned money, she and Daniel were in debt, so they divorced for convenience. Eventually, his parents started using Henry's ID to borrow money from loan sharks. Now he was working to pay off their debts. Living in a crowded room in a rented house that functioned like a dormitory.
It's like a forced labor camp.
Jaden muttered softly after hearing Henry's story. Though he wasn't locked in the dorm, he couldn't leave until he paid off the debt. But every time the debt was close to being paid, Daniel would come and take more money in advance, trapping him there indefinitely. Recently, Daniel had taken Henry's $50, his food money for a month, saying he needed it for alcohol.
Being so hungry, I just came here.
Henry continued crying. When I asked how he knew to come here, he said he had heard Daniel on the phone once when he went back home. Daniel was calling someone, claiming to be his son. After the call, Daniel left a note with an address on the table, which Henry secretly copied.
Dad called himself someone's son, so I thought maybe the people here might be my relatives.
That's what he thought. He had kept the address carefully and came here, prepared to be turned away. It was obvious, even without saying, that he was driven to desperation.
I should go back now. Thank you for the meal. It was delicious.
Wait a minute. I stopped Henry from leaving, but couldn't find the words to say next. I had never done anything for him, not even knowing he existed. I didn't know what to do, but I felt this child was different from Daniel. Even after spending just an hour with him, I could tell he was an honest and good child, unlike what I would expect from Daniel's son. I can't just let him go. As I thought this, Jaden spoke up.
Quit your job and come stay with us. What? But the debt. It's not your debt. But you probably borrowed it from a loan sharks or something. I'll handle it. Really?
Henry cried on the spot like a little child. I was so moved that I couldn't help cry myself. At the same time, anger rose within me at the treatment Henry received from his parents. How can a parent do such a thing to their own child? Jaden acted quickly after that. He immediately went with Henry to his dormitory, talked with the people there, and brought Henry back with him. Jaden is a former police officer, having served in what's commonly referred to as the FBI department. He's cracked down on numerous organizations and helped many gang members reform. He was still active when we got married, but it's been 10 years since he retired. There are still former gangsters who look up to Jaden, so he has his connections. And then, undeterred, Daniel came.
Give Henry back,
he shouted, coming with his wife. For Jaden, Daniel's threats were nothing to be scared of. He had anticipated Daniel's arrival. The ones who caught the son and his wife were not the police, but loan sharks and their associates contacted by Jaden.
Why?
What's the meaning of this? Even if the son and his wife were arrested, it was uncertain how much they could be charged. Henry was an adult and could have escaped if he wanted to, so it was foreseeable they would claim so. Thus, Jaden decided it was better to make them pay back their own debts. I agreed with him. So the lenders that Henry had worked for were asked to take the couple. The two were taken away, dragged by menacing-looking men.
Help us!
By now, they must be living in the labor camp, working from morning till night. They're not entirely without freedom. They get some days off and a little money for food. If they want to pay off faster, they can work more and spend less. They're free to escape, but... What if they escape? I asked Jaden, but he just gave a wry smile, so I didn't press further. The couple had a substantial amount of debt, and it's unclear when they'll be able to get out, but it's not my concern anymore. And now, 6 months later, Henry has completely recovered and is now attending a correspondence high school while working at the dojo where Jaden helps. He's become much brighter, and now he even smiles sometimes. We never thought we'd have a child at our age, but it's made us feel young again, full of energy every day.